Zhuge Liang and Queen Dido are officially in Rise of Kingdoms, and today I'll be telling you everything you need to know about them since all of their skills are basically official. I'll tell you A, if they're very good investments, which hint hint Zhuge Liang definitely is. B, I'll go over their skills once again purely because now they are official. And C, I'll give you possible pairings for both commanders. I'll also discuss if they're even good because you never know, some of them may be bad. Wink wink Queen Dido. This is certainly a video you must watch, especially if you are looking to invest in any of these commanders, or even if you just want to know how it's going to affect you on the field. If you don't even want archer marchers, this is still a good video to watch because you need to know how they're going to affect you. So I have discussed Zhuge Liang and Queen Dido's skills in the past, and I just want to say there are timestamps, so if you want to skip their skills, feel free to skip forward. But let's talk about their official skills. First of all, he has a direct damage factor of 2,000 to 5 targets. That's the best AoE in the whole game by like far. It used to be YSG who had the best AoE with 1,700 to 5 targets. That's like well gone. Zhuge Liang has taken that over with 2,000 to 5 targets, and it's also in a circle. And also, damage dealt to each target is reduced by 15% for each additional target. That's normal. In addition, all targets deal 15% less all damage for the next 3 seconds. That's crazy. So right there, he's dealing the most AoE in the whole entire game by far. And then the targets are doing even less damage. Like, you can't beat that. He's now the best archer commander by far and away just by reading his active skill. Second skill, archer units led by this commander gain 30% increased health. So they went and they were like, alright, YSG's AoE, let's slap that on him and buff it. Let's give him a debuff to decrease all damage. Then let's slap Gilgamesh's health onto him. Like, what were they thinking? So far, he is nutty. Next part, he deals 5% increased all damage, which is just crazy again. That is just a free all damage buff. A lot of commanders do have that amount of all damage. For example, Henry has it. He's actually 10%, but he does have all damage like that. So Zhuge Liang is dealing that increased all damage right there. Then he deals direct damage factor of 500 every single time he negates a control effect. He has a 50% chance to negate the effect and deal the damage factor. It's only to the attacking troops, so I presume it's either only if you're being hit, or maybe it's just worded weirdly, and even if you are hitting someone, for example, with an Artemisia, if you shrug that silence, then you get to deal that 500 damage. We don't know yet because it's very weird the way that it is being worded. Third skill, if this commander's troops contain only archer units, deal increased skill damage of 20%. That's crazy. That's basically kind of like YSG's fourth skill. I mean, YSG's fourth skill is certainly better with the 50%, but like in general, a commander with this much skill damage dealing even more skill damage is just insane. And then he has a 10% chance to increase the attack of archer units by 25% for 3 seconds, 50% when maxed. So that's like YSG's second skill with the attack increase that YSG has. And it's only when only his archers. So, you know, that's a very, very powerful skill on YSG. It is halved in this situation, but once again, it's still very powerful. Overall, this isn't the most amazing skill, but it's not bad. I wouldn't be focusing on this skill, and I'll tell you the best skill layout for Zhuge Liang in a minute. Fourth skill, whenever this commander uses an active skill, their troops gain the Marquis effect, increasing all damage dealt by 10%. For 10 seconds. That's a really nice all damage buff there. If they don't already have the Marquis effect. So if they do, this will not take effect basically. If the troop contains only archer units and has the Marquis effect, whenever the commander uses an active skill, they will consume said effect, the Marquis effect, to deal direct damage factor up to 3 enemy targets of 1,500. Direct damage dealt is not affected by skill damage like increases. 4,500 is the amount of damage factor you will deal once you throw that active skill. Best part about this, it lasts 10 seconds, so it doesn't need a particularly fast rage cycle to use it. Of course, it's better to have a faster rage cycle, so you can throw it off. But, I mean, 10 seconds is more than enough time to get to an active skill, even if you're getting rage reductions, even if you've been silenced, you'll easily get to your active skill within 10 seconds. So this overall is probably his second best skill. I think his active skill is certainly better. It's probably better than his third skill, but it's debatable. You could say the health is better. So overall, that is a really, really good skill. Now, the only downside to this is you will have to throw 2 active skills to actually get the damage factor. But when you expertise him, this is not the case. Once you expertise him upon entering battle, you gain the Marquis effect. So straight up, you're getting 10% increased all damage. And this one is for 15 seconds. I don't know if that's a permanent change. So possibly his fourth skill, also becomes 15 seconds. But maybe not. It may just be only his expertise. Now, one thing to note is that is okay. You might be thinking, whatever, he's gaining the Marquis effect. But now you don't have to throw 2 active skills to get that extra 4,500 damage factor. You are dealing it when you enter the battle and throw 1 active skill. Dumb how powerful. That's dumb powerful. Like, there is nothing in game close to how powerful that is. Like, by far. That is the most valuable expertise on any commander I've basically ever seen. Another thing, whenever he's burning of his active skill, I'm just going to say his active skill are in effect, and whenever his 4th skill deals direct damage factor, he actually gains 30 rage. Now, this isn't much rage, but let's just see what this would do. So let's say in a situation, this is actually damage factor to any target. So he could possibly be getting about 300 rage in a turn right there. If it is only whenever they deal damage and it counts as 1 tick for each skill, so that means every time he throws a skill that is 30 rage, then it will be 60 rage in total from it. So it depends on how this is calculated. It just says skill deals skill damage. So I'm presuming only when they actually deal skill damage once. So even though it hits 3 targets and hits 5 targets, I don't think he'll gain 30 rage 5 times. I think he'll just gain 30 rage and then 30 rage. I think that's how that works. That's a nice little rage, basically rebate, but it's nothing too crazy. There are certainly stronger. And he's got the skill tree, so Rejuvenate is already there. It may lead to over raging, but in the end, it's still a fairly powerful skill, and I don't mind having it. I think it's a pretty good thing to add there. Queen Dido is basically the same as when she was released. First of all, she deals direct damage 2,000 to 1 target, so that's fine. And if the target is a rallied army, this skill also reduces the skill damage of up to 5 enemies by 30%. That is really good, being able to basically give her some anti-swarm when she is taking hits from commanders that are basically hitting her when she's in a garrison and she's being rallied. So that allows you to basically negate their skill damage by a fair amount whenever you throw your active skill, and that's pretty good debuff. Her second skill, she gains 20% archer defense and she deals 5% increased damage to infantry. If she only contains archer units, she also takes 10% less normal attack. Now that's a pretty good thing to have in a garrison, taking 10% less normal attack. Some people say that you'll never really get an all archer garrison, but if you're being fair, like most of the time you will have an all archer garrison. You can just kick the people out who are not doing all archers. So having that normal attack reduction is going to make you a little bit more tanky when you are being rallied, and it's nice to have. The defense is actually very low here for the most part. I would have expected at least 30 to 40%, but it is 20%, and the all damage to infantry isn't going to change much because no one's really going to rally infantry into a Dido garrison if you're being realistic here. Third skill, archer units gain 20% increased attack while garrisoned in a stronghold or your city, and the normal attacks of this commander have a 5% chance to inflict the ambushed effect on the target's troops. It's 20% when maxed, for 3 seconds, which prevents the target troop from benefiting from effects triggered by being surrounded. This can trigger once every 8 seconds. Once again, that's nothing too major. Like, I guess when you are being surrounded, they do, I think it's in total about 5% to 10% more all damage. So it's kind of like a 5 to 10% all damage reduction. But for the most part, it's nothing too insane. And it's nothing to, really think, wow, that's a major debuff. Though it will have some uses, like being able to negate really big swarms, especially if it's on a city, it might not be too bad. Fourth skill, while garrisoned in a stronghold or your city, archer units led by this commander gain 20% increased health, so that's a really nice health boost when she is garrisoning, and can reduce incoming skill damage by 5% once every 10 seconds. This is, once again, nothing too crazy. I mean, it's not really groundbreaking in terms of having a commander here that I'd be like, wow, she's garrison meta. But, I mean, it's all pretty average, and I think it might go well with a Minamoto. Looking at her expertise, it just increases her, basically, her third skill, that seems. So she gains the 40% increased attack now when maxed. That attack, to note, you don't have to be in a garrison to gain. But then while garrisoned, her normal attacks now have a 30% chance to reduce the target's defense by 40% and inflict the ambushed effect. So, I mean, overall, she's doing a lot of debuffs to the target, and it's really anti-swarm in a different way. Usually we see anti-swarm, but the anti-swarm is they swarm you and they take ridiculous damage. This anti-swarm's different. They swarm you and they take ridiculous debuffs. It's very unique in the way that Lilith is trying to push it. And I think it actually might bring her a lot more value in compared to other garrison commanders if you invest in her. Because all other garrison commanders really are just damage. But she seems to be not so much damage but more debuffs. Though I don't think she will become too meta garrison, I think she will probably hold a lot of value in terms of being a garrison in general. Now, what pairs are there for Zhuge Liang? And there are a few obvious ones. First of all, you've obviously got Boudica Prime. That's the old best archer commander with the new best archer commander. Certainly reasonable. I don't think Boudica Prime could even be said to not be the best archer commander anymore. She is just on par with Zhuge Liang. She's a bit different in the way that she deals damage because she just has a lot of stats and she's very tanky. Zhuge Liang is just a lot of damage and not as tanky. So Zhuge Liang and Boudica are certainly a reasonable option, especially since Boudica's expertise increases your chance to dispel control effects, so you can deal that damage factor a little bit more often to the opponents. However, there are a few things to note here. First of all, you are losing out on a bunch of chance to negate damage, control effects here. Boudica already has an 80% chance, plus 50%, that's 130%, so you're 30% over, and that's kind of a waste. Next thing, I would rather have a little bit more march speed on the Zhuge Liang because I feel like a lot of people will swarm it down. But Boudica does bring a lot of tankiness, which is something to keep in mind. Boudica's debuff also makes the opponents take more skill damage, so having the Zhuge Liang do that control effect and then the opponents basically get wrecked from skill damage is certainly an option. And I think that it's definitely a nice addition to have. especially for like this second skill. It doesn't do too much skill damage, but increasing the amount they take is always welcome and a kind addition. One thing to note is that even if you do not have Boudica and Zhuge Liang together, Boudica's skill damage increase will still work because it's a debuff on the opponent, and so you will still deal that damage. The only thing is, it's not as reliable as in when he's going to throw the skill, because if he is behind Boudica, you know that it's going to be skip a turn and then throw his active skill. That's just one thing I thought everyone should probably keep in mind. Now, in terms of AoE farming, Boudica's healing plus Zhuge Liang's AoE is certainly going to be really good, and I'm going to use that in KVK to AoE barb farm for like all day. But that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about field here. The next pair is a fairly niche one because not many people have Henry, but Henry primary with Zhuge Liang secondary is really, really good. He's a really, really tanky commander. Skill damage taking reduction of 30% for 5 seconds. 2,300 damage factor is also quite a bit. He also has a 20% increased attack, 20% defense, and when off territory, which is the main thing I really like about Henry here, you gain 20% increased march speed. So when you're off territory, you're going to be able to get away really quick, and that's really, really good, especially if you're out fighting for a flag, you're on the enemy territory, you know that you're going to be able to get that march speed and get away quicker. That's definitely something Zhuge Liang needs because the main disadvantage that he has is he's got no march speed. So Henry does help negate that. Henry's also got revenge damage, which it doesn't really seem Zhuge Liang has that much revenge damage. I mean, possibly when he gets a control effect, he could shrug it and give that revenge damage. Also, it does make your Henry have a chance to be immune to silence, which is what I found the main downfall of Henry was compared to Boudica. Boudica, whenever you attack a Guan Yu, which is very common for infantry, she doesn't really get silenced too often, but Henry with YSG is always getting silenced, and it's a bit frustrating when I'm trying to take out the enemies. Maybe it's just because I'm used to not being silenced, but for the most part, Henry being silenced is his main disadvantage, and putting a Zhuge Liang behind that kind of negates that, so I do really like that as well. Henry's expertise, which I will be going for eventually, does make him even stronger as well in terms of being more tanky. He deals 30% more normal attack when he reaches 70 rage or above, and otherwise he takes 20% less normal attack damage, and that's really good. Henry's also got the support tree, which means that you can do a lot more rage, like in terms of rage gain here. And then also Zhuge Liang is the rage engine that Henry would want, since you do want to have some sort of a rage engine on your Henry. Also, I don't mind having Buckler Shield talent on Henry as well, since he is a conquering commander. Third pair of note here is Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar with Zhuge Liang is certainly going to be quite good. I'm going to test it out a little bit because my Nebu is only 5511. So Nebu's damage factor is another damage factor to 5 targets. It's fairly high. It's just a tad less than YSG, but Nebu also offers march speed, which, like I said, is something Zhuge Liang really needs. So I really like Nebu's march speed, and Nebu's also got defense. And one thing to note is Zhuge Liang doesn't have defense either. So the defense on Henry, Boudica, and Nebu is very welcome. Because if they had health, it might be over health. Like, there is actually a point where you get too much health. And putting Zhuge Liang with Gilgamesh is probably an example of that. So Nebuchadnezzar having that defense on his second skill is really, really good. If you have his third skill as well, you gain a bunch of rage reduction for the opponent. So that's a nice debuff. And you have 15% all damage. So that's really good when you're throwing active skills. One thing to note is that once you expertise your Nebu, you will deal a little bit more damage factor. But this isn't necessary for it to be a good pairing. A 5-5-1-5 Nebu is perfectly fine, just as a 5-5-1-5 Henry. Now, speaking of skills, the most important skill for Zhuge Liang, definitely active skill, definitely the second skill, and definitely the third skill. So if you want to use Zhuge Liang at the cheapest he can be, or you just want to make him as effective as you can make him with a limited amount of gold heads, you would go for a 5-5-1-5 Zhuge Liang. In the end, though, I think you should be expertising him, even more valuable than expertising a Boudica, because having this Marquis effect when you enter battle means you can retreat from a battle without throwing your second active skill, and then kind of decimate your opponents. Or if someone runs away, you can leave the battle, whatever, go drop your active skill on someone else with a rage chain, decimate your opponents. So you can see right there, having him basically as an expertise commander is definitely going to help you deal a lot more skill damage. Now for the field, I mean, Queen Dido would only really be good for swarming rallies, just to debuff the troops around the rally, but other than that, she's not too useful. So here's what I would do with a Queen Dido. If you're fielding, I'd either put her behind Boudica or Henry, preferably Henry for the rally swarm, because Henry's a bit more tanky, so if someone does attack the Henry, your Queen Dido will still be inflicting that debuff as much as she can before she does get killed. I wouldn't really put Queen Dido behind any other commanders because she's probably going to be a little bit too squishy, so I'd prefer her behind not really a Nebu, but more a Henry, because Henry is certainly way more tanky. You could consider Boudica, but I think Boudica alone has better pairings, and she does seem to get taken out quite quickly when you're swarming a rally, because her debuff is just too valuable. So if you can split the Boudica and the Dido, you're definitely going to be very, very good in that situation. Another thing you could go for is a Cyrus, since not many people really attack Cyrus primary. You could run a Cyrus primary with Dido secondary, just to be like an absolute debuff god when you're hitting a rally, but in the field, that's going to absolutely suck, and I wouldn't really be doing it. For rally swarms, though, it's a fairly good option. Now, Queen Dido, I think that really, you could use her at like 5-5-5-1 to swarm a rally, but for the most part, I just expertise her. Like, she's going to be a garrison commander, and I had expertise her for that. You do get a massive defense debuff when you are in a garrison. you also gain extra attack, and your chance to inflict the debuff is also increased. So I think that she kind of does need her expertise in that situation. Now, in terms of using Queen Dido as a garrison commander, I would be using her certainly with a Minamoto, because a Minamoto has a bunch of all damage here, and a Minamoto, she doesn't really have too many debuffs, but her revenge damage is really good, so you're kind of doing a bunch of debuffs and revenge damage. So you're getting the damage that Queen Dido is lacking when she's getting swarmed from Amanatore's revenge damage, and you're stacking the debuffs on the opponent so they A, take even more damage, or B, they just get wrecked in general from just, swarming you and then taking a bunch of damage from Amanatore revenge while being debuffed. So it's a fairly good garrison combination, and I think this is probably the only one you can use. Like, you could maybe try Queen Dido with Heraclius, but I'm not sure how that would work, since Heraclius is a very, very shield-heavy commander. Also, Amanatore does have a nice debuff here, which could go with the opponents, making them deal that less skill damage, hopefully, because you'll be able to get this skill damage reduction on the opponents before they'd actually be able to swarm you out, especially if you can hit them with an Amanatore active skill. So I think that's really, really good right there as well. Overall, I think Zhuge Liang is certainly a very good investment for almost every player. He's probably an investment you should get before Boudica, some would even say. But in terms of Queen Dido, I'd probably be skipping her for the most part. Like, yeah, she might be pretty good in Garrison, but we don't know yet. We'd have to see that. And she's not going to be that amazing in field, but I know Zhuge Liang is going to kill it in the field. Now, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see me unlocking Zhuge Liang, doing testing, fighting people in KVK, because I have a KVK coming up, and me putting about 300 golders into him, you should certainly subscribe to the channel. Now, I do thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.